All right, so let's get started. So, Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do as a health and wellness professional?
Yeah. So I'm currently a health coach, but I work full time for the YMCA here at Southeast Raleigh, in Southeast Raleigh. So I manage their wellness department. So I manage personal training, group fitness, the wellness floor, Y health programs, anything that has to do with health and wellness. It's my jam. So I do that full time. And then, like I said, on the side, at this point, I have a very little side left,
Mhm.
um, but I do health coaching.
Good for you. That's awesome. How long have you been doing that for?
So health coaching, I started back in 2020,
Okay.
and when COVID broke out, and then and my Y actually shut down for a little bit to figure out what they were going to do and where they were going, like who they were going to ask to come back. So I was actually the wellness director of the Alexander Y at that point, which is across town, and then um, when they opened back up. I opted to go to a different branch. And so then I was at Southeast. So I've been at Southeast since May of 2020. And so it all kind of culminated at the same time. So the health coaching was there and that was there as well.
So you started all this, and correct me if I'm wrong, prior to you getting the Accu-Joint procedure and kind of finding out what was really going on with your body and your toe pain, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I've always been in like health and wellness. It's always been my jam in one way or another. But in those two dimensions, like health coaching started in 2020 and then, the health and wellness, but prior to that, working at Alexander started in 2019. I was a personal trainer prior to that. So it just keeps going backward, like all the stuff. So
Right. So with all that being said, it's very clear you're active, very into health wellness. With all of that in mind, after finding out that you were experiencing this degenerative joint disease, how did the diagnosis affect your teaching, your daily routines, how you go about lifestyle every day?
yeah. So degenerative is the best word because it is a slow decline.
Mhm.
So it started off just being like, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable. Oh, it's starting to bother me more. And in the course of 3 years, it absolutely plummeted to the degree that I, 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 I could not take a step without pain. And
Wow.
so that was just stepping. That was just walking, getting out of my car, walking to where I needed to go. There was constant pain. So, let alone having to teach classes. So I teach group fitness classes. And at that point, I had taught dance fitness for years. I mean, it is just my life's blood.
Hmm.
And in fact, I had opened a group fitness studio back in 2012. It was called Studio ZT, which stood for Zumba Tracie,
Hmm.
because that is how I was known in the community. I was known for dancing and dance fitness. So, I had to like it was absolutely miserable, especially getting into year number three, where I just like I honestly look back and I don't know how I do it. It's kind of one of those things like when you're in the worst kind of state and you just push through and then you look back once it's all gone, you're like, how in the world
Wow.
did I endure that?
Right.
That's the kind of sensation it was because I knew like I just couldn't do. And I kept trying to push my body. And that was what was hard, is that my mind kept telling me, "Oh, you can." And my toe was like, "Oh, no, you're not."
Right.
And I'm shutting down the show.
So I did look at a lot of your YouTube content, prior to us meeting, and that was super helpful. And one of the main things that stood out to not only myself, but the AccuFix team as a whole is that you did try, a bunch of different methods to kind of alleviate your pain. Can you just go into a little bit of detail in terms of what treatment options did you try before learning about the AccuJoint implant?
All right. If you can think about it, I tried it. And so I'm going to try to give an exhaustive list. So we're going to start with some of the basic things
Mhm.
like ibuprofen and Epsom salts
Mhm.
and massage therapy, and then inserts for my shoes. So it wasn't pushing onto the toe so much. It wasn't like flexing as much. Um, then I started dabbling into reflexology and acupuncture. And as things got worse and worse, I started exploring more intense ibuprofen types of approaches like Toradol through an IV.
Wow.
Then I started trying stem cell injections. I think I said acupuncture.
Yeah.
Oh, then it got as extreme as, well, fasting. So fasting helps the body to reduce inflammation, and I knew that that was part of an issue. So as a pain management strategy, I was doing extended fasts, which like the way my body frame and structure is, like I don't have a lot to like fast on, but I would do upwards to three, and I went into like a 5 day fast at one point because I was so desperate to
Hmm.
try to get some pain relief. And then I started then like I mean I had minor things. Then I reached into dry needling. And
Wow.
so the last year before I considered surgery, I did dry needling. And if you've ever had dry needling on the bottom of your foot,
Hmm.
it is one of the most sensitive places. And my therapist was like, I don't know how you show up. I was coming like I think I was going every week for a while or twice a month. It was insane. And the money that I was putting out to try to support all of these things was absolutely
Right.
exhausting as well. And nothing worked. I mean, it would take maybe an edge off for a little bit, but I was living in pain and the it was degenerative. So every day that went by, it got worse
Right.
and worse and worse.
Well, not only are you, spending a lot of money on all of these options that aren't working, but I can't even begin to imagine what kind of physical toll that was taking on your body between the fasting and the needling and whatnot. But physical aspects aside, how did you feel emotionally to be limited when fitness and health coaching, that kind of not necessarily was put on pause, but it was disrupted by this constant
Oh.
pain that you were experiencing every day?
Yeah. No, the emotional part outside of the pain was probably the most concerning for me because exercise for me was an outlet of emotional health.
Mhm.
It was also my identity. I was starting to lose both of those.
Mhm.
I was also so I was coming into being 50. So I think all of this started to happen when I was about 48. So I
Mhm.
was coming into 50. I already knew my body was changing in so many different ways. And now I'm losing function of the toe. And I could not imagine my life without significant movement.
Mhm.
Um, so I was a gymnast growing up, and every year on my birthday, I do a back handspring just to see how
That's
old,
awesome.
because I wondered how old I would be before I couldn't do it again. And
Mhm.
that became a thing for me where, I wonder if I'm too old to do it. So every year I do one back handspring. And so it was getting to the point where it was like, I can't even, like, my birthday was going to be coming up. And I was
Right.
like, oh my gosh, I don't know that this is going to happen. But again, like, anyway, so the emotional toll was hard. It definitely put a strain on my marriage too,
Mhm.
because I was just, it was just really hard. And it
Mhm.
made me obviously a lot more on edge because
Yeah,
I was constantly
absolutely.
thinking about and feeling the pain. So just my threshold for tolerating all things. I mean, even at work too, when like it was always nagging at the back of my mind. I always had it to think about. It was
Right.
like in the morning, I wake up, I put my feet on the floor, and the first thing I felt, I'm like, when is this, when is it going to stop?
Right. So after exhausting pretty much every option out there, and again, I commend you for waking up every day and dealing with this because I could not imagine that stress. When did it come to a point where you started to look into a surgical option, and how did you come across the Accu-Joint implant?
Yeah. So basically after exhausting my entire list, and I'm very much a like alternative health kind of person where I
Right.
will explore every single option I can possibly before I, have to lean into medications. And I found that honestly, the only thing that was, quote, alleviating any amount of pain was taking significant doses of like the Toradol, which is not a healthy, like that's not solving the problem. It's just making me feel better for the moment. So my husband and I'll never forget, we were sitting out on the porch, and I would say, I think it had been like maybe 3 years prior, my husband had had a hip resurfacing. So it basically is like a hip replacement, but different. It's a whole different process where they resurface the joint, and then instead of like having to pull the whole thing out and putting an implant in, they just resurface the joint, and it was amazing. It changed his life.
Mhm.
And he says to me, and if they've come up with a hip resurfacing, why why wouldn't they have something out there like a toe resurfacing kind
Mhm.
of thing? So I'm like, huh. He was like, let me Google that. So he Googled toe resurfacing.
Mhm.
That is when Accu-Joint or Accu-Fix popped up on my YouTube feed or on his YouTube feed, and he was like, hey, this is what popped up. Let's listen to this. And so I watched the video and I was like, oh my gosh, I almost felt like it really felt very divine because we were like, there has to be something. We Google it. There it is. It
Right.
was what we were looking for. So that's how the actual idea of, oh my gosh, this could be an option.
Right.
So now let me start exploring that more.
So when you first came across AccuFix and the Accu-Joint, like you said in your internet search, was there anything else in particular compared to other options that really stood out to you that made you think, you know what, this might just be a very viable solution?
Yeah, it was the technology that they described in the video of how the implant went in, and when the toe or when you transferred the weight, it wasn't putting the weight onto the implant, it was transferring the weight onto like the
Hmm.
toe, and so that is what really caught my eye because I mean, I never really thought, well, when I did think about surgery, I was limited in my thought. I only thought toe fusion, like we just stopped the
Hmm.
joint from moving, but I knew that was going to absolutely shut down my life too.
Yeah.
So when I saw that as an option, I was like, that is exactly what I'm envisioning. That is exactly what I want. And so the next step was, how do I find someone a surgeon who does AccuFix,
Right.
hopefully in my state? And God bless, there was Dr. Boom, like right there in Raleigh.
So from the time of you, again, doing this internet search, deciding this is what you were going to do, what was the time frame in terms of discovering AccuFix and then actually going in for your procedure?
No, it was fast
Okay.
because as soon as I found the video,
Mhm.
I immediately searched. I found Dr. Boehm. I called their office. I said I want to do a consultation. I actually came in and and I told him, "Look, I've done all the research. This is what I want. I just need to know if you're the one who can do it, and if you can do it, I need to know, have you done it before? What is the success rate?" And it was hilarious because he's just
Right.
like, usually I'm the person who's like, hey, have you ever thought about, I've never had
Yeah.
somebody come right in and be like, hey, this is what I want. And then I remember that was in, I think I probably came across it in July, August. I got the consultation, and then it was that November.
This is 2023, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
2023. And
Perfect.
it was that November that I got on schedule for surgery. So it was November 1st of 2023.
That's great. But moving into more of the specifics of your procedure, how would you describe your experience with the surgery itself?
It was fantastic. Um, it was it was easy. My doctor was super good. The surgery center was really good. They set me up really well.
Hmm.
Um, I I remembering, of course, the the numbing and all of the nerve blocks are amazing.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember going in and everybody was just, I said they were so fast, like a pit crew. Like
Yeah.
everybody was like, boom, 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 boom. And so before I actually, went under, it was just very good. And then when I woke up in recovery, Dr. Bohm was there. They explained everything. And like even Dr. Bohm said, he was like, because he had done like x-rays of my foot. And he said, oh, no, the x-rays don't even do it justice. He said when he got in there, there were actually pieces of chipped bone
Wow.
floating around. And he was like, I don't, he told my husband, I don't even know how she was actually walking. It
Yeah.
was an absolute disaster inside. Um, so the surgery went well. It was quick. It was easy. I feel like maybe it was like I feel it was a short amount of time, like 45
Hmm.
minutes or an hour of actual like the actual surgery.
Right.
Um, and then, I had the nerve block. They sent me home.
Yeah. Um, After the fact, in terms of your recovery, how
Yeah.
was that process? How soon did you start noticing improvements? And did your recovery compare to what you already knew or expected from the Accu-Joint?
Yeah. So one thing to note was that um, always good to get ahead of the pain.
Hmm.
And because that nerve block does such a great job, you're like, I'm fine. Um, I I didn't get ahead of the pain. So like by the time I went to bed, I should have taken medicine to kind of like offset that, even though I was feeling okay and I didn't. So then the pain just kind of came on and then I was trying to get ahead of it. Best thing to do is to superset whatever pain medication with like ibuprofen and like going back and forth. And day one for me was hurtful
Hmm.
and it was a lot of pain and sensation only because I didn't superset the medication prior. Had I done that, it would have definitely been a lot better of a first day experience. But by the time I got into day two, it it was definitely tolerable. Like I wasn't just sitting there with like throbbing pain. And then I think it may have been day two or maybe it was day three that Dr. Boehm had me come in because he had to take out, like open up the bandage and make sure that everything looked clean and the sutures and everything like that. And then he transferred me because at that point they just put me into like a reinforced open kind of like toed shoe
Hmm.
that just had big straps over it. And then he transitioned me and he asked how I felt, like we tried out either one, into an actual boot.
Right.
And he told me, get up and walk.
It's time.
I was like, are you kidding me right now? And it's hilarious because I have videos of me like trying to get into the facility.
Yeah.
And then coming out, I had the boot on. I definitely had crutches and I definitely needed those crutches for some stability and
Hmm.
support. But I was able to like walk out of the facility.
Hmm.
And then that started the journey of like, hey, you need to walk on it. Now, what I did tell my surgeon, and he didn't believe me, but he learned me very quickly. I told him I am an overachiever. So whatever you would tell a normal person, like you need to scale that back
Hmm.
because I'm going to overachieve it on a natural level.
Right.
Um, so he didn't really get that. And so he just told me like natural things to do. And of course, that first week, um, I put myself on the elliptical.
You're very brave.
Uh-huh. And I mean, it was slow,
Hmm.
but I just wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And but the point is that boot and I was able to get active and start moving.
Hmm.
Um, so November, right? Surgery done. March was my birthday. That was birthday back handspring.
Right.
And toe was so I refer to it as I call toe. I refer to it as toe. Toe. Um, was definitely able to do that. I did a back handspring, I did a side aerial, I did a lot of different things in the gym. I definitely like it I had a lot of sensation and it kind of had a little oomph to it,
Mhm.
but it was there and I could do stuff.
Right. So would you say, again, leading into that next question, pain-free movement to you, what does that look like today? Are you always, able to kind of disassociate and not think about what previously you experienced with your toe pain and whatnot?
Yeah. There so I still do have sensations in toe. So toe still has sensations.
Hmm.
Sometimes depending, and I would say like the plantar fascia area, it
Hmm.
stays tight often. So like very often I feel like I have to just kind of like rub it. I definitely move it back and forth all the time to keep it mobile. The range of motion will never be what it used to be, but it is so much more than what I had, and it's so much more, and it doesn't have it doesn't have that pain. It has sensation, but it doesn't have pain. And it was the pain that was so debilitating
Hmm.
and distracting. So, and again, the further I get into the healing, like the better and better and better it feels like it's become.
So aside from, the physical aspects in terms of, again, touching on your YouTube video, you mentioned that the challenges you faced obviously restricted your mobility. Having to wear prosthetics in your sneakers, not being able to walk correctly. How has the procedure impacted or alleviated maybe some of the challenges that are outside the physical constant pain that you were feeling from, the second you wake up in the morning to the second you go to bed?
Yeah. So it again, that pain is not distracting me anymore.
Hmm.
It it honestly is not something like sometimes I really have to stop and think, oh wait, oh my gosh, you know what? I can walk up these stairs.
Yeah.
I I can remember in my recovery thinking of like, when will I be able to walk down or walk up without this feeling,
Hmm.
or without this kind of pain? And now it's like it's amazing. So just the emotional part about it has been so liberating, so freeing. Um, it's brought back so much joy
Hmm.
into my life. It's opened up, the things that I love again. And, and I mean, being 50, I've definitely had to readjust expectations, and
Hmm.
that's a whole different storyline. But within that context of everything, like the toe isn't something that I was like, it's getting worse. It wasn't even like, okay, it's gonna plateau and hang out here for a while. It was just getting worse. So I was just like, what do I have to lose?
Hmm.
I have everything, and even if it didn't get better, at least I can check it off my list as something that I could try. And I'm not gonna be in any worse of a place than I was prior.
Right.
Just immense like gratitude. And again, I would say it's the joy. It's brought the joy back into my life and
That's awesome.
the ease of
Hmm.
life. Yeah.
One of the other things which I feel like embodies everything you're saying right now, but you had mentioned in your video that, your purpose in your personal life and also your professional life is to create a life that's going to help people love themselves back, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And in what ways has the Accu-Joint helped you do that in your own life? I know you've touched on that a little bit already, saying the joy has been overwhelming and whatnot.
Yeah. And it is like the biggest mantra that I live by is to create a life that's going to love you back. Take control of the things that you can, and, have faith in the things that you can't control. And the AccuFix was just that way of like, hey, all right, I know that you like to do things this way, but choose something different, like choose something that might feel a little bit outside your comfort zone.
Mhm.
Surgery was way outside my comfort zone, but it's a way that I could create a life that is going to, it was the best thing. It was the best thing for me. I'm not going to be the person who settles into being miserable and, I'm going to do everything I can differently, even if it's outside my scope of like belief or anything. I'm going to try it because if it works, then like there's so much, again, there's just so much opportunity.
So again, I want to touch back to how you said surgery was never something that was really, on your list until you were basically at your wit's end. And again, you also mentioned that people do get comfortable, unfortunately, living in pain. So for somebody who would been or is now on that same page in terms of they don't want surgery, they're kind of just living with the pain day by day, what would you say to someone who's considering the Accu-Joint procedure, but those other variables might be kind of weighing on their decision?
Yeah. Um, Find a good person that you can just share and talk through this with and share your feelings and your thoughts. Because sometimes when you talk out loud and you actually can hear yourself saying some of the things that you're saying, then it really kind of makes you listen. Because when it's bottled up in our head, sometimes it's just not. But when you hear yourself saying, I'm in so much pain. I can't go on living this way. And somebody says, okay, here's an option. And then you're like, oh, but I don't want to take that option, but I've exhausted everything. And, it's like, okay, well, the bottom line is it's going to be painful. There's
Mhm.
no way to escape pain. So how can you embrace it and create and use it to create something? Because if you just and it's a choice too, because some people want to stay in pain and live in pain.
Mhm.
I mean, that is a choice and it's going to have a lot of downsides to it. It's going to affect your mental state. It affects your physical state. It affects your relationships. And just knowing and seeing and looking at the outcome of like, if I keep living this way, this is the path, this is what I'm going to get. And if
Mhm.
I don't want to get that, what other path could I try?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just about, like I said, talking it out with somebody. Also, like opening your mind, just be curious. That's what I would start with, is
Mhm.
that just because you're curious about something doesn't mean you have to do it, doesn't mean you have to even accept it. Just get curious, ask all the questions, get information, let time like marinate on it.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and sometimes you know, it's all about the right time and the right season. So sometimes the information is just, it's for me, it was a seed that got planted and I knew exactly what I wanted. I was like in the right place to be like, this is the time, water it, grow it, harvest
Mhm.
the fruit. And other people, it's like, I just need a seed, just open, collect information, let it set, and in the right season, people will know what it is that they want to do.
Right. And I feel like as, you're explaining all this and advocating, just the amount of trust that you've put into AccuFix and the Accu-Joint procedure is astounding. So I'm so glad you were able to share all that with me. But is there anything else that you would like people to know about your journey? Anything else you want to tell people that may be in a similar position as you? Just anything else that you would like to add?
Just open yourself up to the possibility because I just, for me, like it has seriously changed my entire life. I, I just look back and I just can't believe what it is I currently have. And I feel like I have more now than what I used to have prior to even the degenerative part going down.
Mhm.
So I guess that's what I would just say is just leave people with, do the research, think about it, marinate, pray, consider whatever it is, to process the information, like ask the questions inside of like, what would hold me back from doing this? What
Mhm.
is it that I'm really trying to achieve? Know who you are, know what you want, and know how to serve. If you can answer those three questions confidently, then it really does kind of help you to kind of direct, what's right for you.
I do have one more question. So, can we expect a birthday back in spring in March?
Yes, you can.
Yay! That's awesome. That is so cool.
Absolutely. Yep. I post it every year on YouTube.
We will
So
be looking out for that. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time. This was awesome. I know people have been dying to hear your story, and this is definitely going to be great for other people to hear. So, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to put it all together to give me a place to be able to share because it's meant so much to me.